Hey everyone, welcome to Strange Stories, where we explore near-death experiences and supernatural stories from people who've had a glimpse of the other side. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Without further ado, let's get to the story of the day. Story 1. I was standing in the basement, facing the basement's west wall, at a white and red metal table with chrome legs. The stairs to the basement were behind me. I was playing with an 8-inch plastic Cupid doll dressed in a mint and dark green crochet dress and bonnet. The dark green satin bonnet strings were knotted, and I couldn't undo it. I began calling to my mother for assistance in removing the knot when I heard our family dog, a collie and German Shepherd mix, growl at the foot of the stairs. I turned around to face the dog, who was still lying there growling. I became terrified, stood still, and kept calling for my mother. She didn't say anything. Because I was scared, my voice was not very loud when I called for her. I began walking slowly toward the bottom of the stairs, keeping my body close to the stairwell. I was making my way to the bottom step while keeping an eye on the dog. I came to a halt halfway down the stairs and called out to my mother again, but my voice was muffled. The dog was still lying there and growling at me. Because my mother did not arrive, I made my way to the bottom of the stairs to begin climbing them. I turned my back on the dog and climbed the first step while still calling for my mother, going very close around the gray metal pole at the bottom of the stairs. From behind, the dog attacked me, but I have no recollection of the actual attack. My mother was at the top of the stairs with a rolled-up newspaper in her right hand, coming down the steps as I was climbing the bottom 3. She screamed at the dog. She carried me upstairs, slammed the cellar door, led me into the bathroom, and placed my head under the sink faucet. There was plenty of it. My mother grabbed a pink summer weight blanket from the hall closet, wrapped me in it, and ran to the neighbors, yelling at them to take us to the hospital. My grandmother and grandfather were carrying me into the emergency room. My grandfather was a physician, and my grandmother worked as a nurse. My grandmother stood beside me on the operating table as they placed a black rubber thing with a metal tube on it over my mouth and nose. There were cotton balls on it, and they applied ether to the cotton balls to put me to sleep. There was a huge round light fixture above where I was lying on the table, as well as very tall cabinets that reached all the way to the ceiling and contained hospital supplies. There were other people in the operating room, and I could see the door. My grandmother instructed me to start counting backwards from 100. I didn't understand numbers and thought this was a stupid request. They told me not to worry. So after she said the numbers, I repeated them. I only remember getting to number 97. The next thing I recall is waking up in the middle of the night in my mother and father's dark bedroom, in their bed. "Mommy, what is it like to die?" I asked my mother, who was standing at the foot of the bed. I went back to sleep after she said nothing. I had an out-of-body experience right before I woke up and asked her this question, in which I was suddenly in spirit body, floating stationary in a void of darkness. I could feel myself in the outline of my body, but it wasn't there. I could see as if there was no darkness, just as one can see when there's light in a room, but everything is black. This place was deafeningly quiet. It was so quiet that it hurt my ears not to hear anything. There was no light. Despite this, I could see clearly all around the black space as if I were in a light-filled environment. I knew there were invisible barriers I couldn't cross. I had a feeling they were nearby. "Isn't there anyone there?" I inquired. I became agitated after doing this several times. Nobody responded. I was aware that I was the only one present. I thought I'd be alone like this for the rest of my life. I was experiencing extreme emotional anxiety because no one would respond, implying that no one was present with me. I was just floating around and calling out. It didn't sit well with me. This bothered me greatly. Then I found myself in my mother and father's bed, and when I awoke, I saw my mother standing at the foot of the bed. I was completely pain-free. I didn't remember being bitten by the dog at the time. All I wanted to know was how it felt to die. My mother was at the foot of the bed when I sat up. "Mommy, what is it like to die?" I immediately asked. She was shocked, but said nothing. I rolled over and went back to sleep. My mother later informed me that the dog bit the back of my head. My grandfather had stitched up my head and told her he didn't know whether I would live or die. My mother had been given permission to take me home rather than leave me in the hospital. She and my father had been sleeping with me at night to keep an eye on me. My head was swollen from the bite for over a month, and they said I looked like a waterhead baby. It was a very long recovery, and I was terrified of going down the basement stairs or being near any kind of animal after that. For years, anything that moved suddenly around me made me extremely nervous, especially animals of any kind. My grandfather claimed the dog bit through my skull but missed my brain by a quarter inch. The dog had been put down immediately after biting me. My mother told me that what I had said to her made her afraid that I would die. I never mentioned the out-of-body experience to her. I now think about death on a daily basis. Story number 2. I was admitted to the hospital after driving myself to the emergency room due to breathing difficulties caused by asthma. I was in the hospital for about a week before my life-changing event. I took a walk to stretch my legs, carrying my IV pole with me to the nurse's station. I had the foresight to ask the RN, "Would you watch me tonight?" "Are you feeling okay?" she asked. "I'm not sure," I replied. "Honey, keep your doors open and I'll be there for you," she said. Because of the high foot traffic and light, I usually kept my door closed, but that night I left it open. I crawled into bed. Because I had trouble breathing when my head was flat, I raised it to a 45-degree angle. I was drifting in and out of sleep when my respiratory therapist arrived at midnight to give me my breathing treatment. I was drowsy and had the option of taking the albuterol. I chose not to because it would make me jittery and I would then be awake. So I skipped the treatment in favor of one at 4 a.m. I was sound asleep when I heard an urgent voice tell me to wake up now and press the call button. Now! I must state that I do not hear voices in my head unless they are my own voice of reason and a little of self-talk. But this voice was distinct. I immediately responded to this voice. I can recreate the movements and sounds I made, but I believe it'll be difficult to write them eloquently. My body was not moving in the way I desired. I was attempting to reach the call bell right, which was the little blue nurses had on the railing. I was struggling to get there. My arm was barely moving and I could feel my head dropping down. But I pressed the call button. I then realized I was in big trouble. I can't breathe. I can't breathe, I said weakly, pushing as much air out of my lungs as I could. I was fighting my legs, chest, and flailing arms. I was trying to inhale with everything I had. I couldn't do it. I was drowning. "Honey, are you having a nightmare?" the nurse yelled as she ran into the room. I then came to a halt as I heard her yell, "Call a code blue." I noticed her, but I couldn't respond to her or anyone else. The respiratory guy then yelled at me to breathe. I could feel him rubbing my chest. He had his hands on my face. I could see their serious expression in their eyes. I then lost my ability to see, but I could hear a lot of noise. "Breathe. Come on, you can do it. Breathe." And I couldn't take a breath. I then had the thought, will anyone be able to make me breathe? Am I going to die? Is this how it feels to die? And then, all of a sudden, I didn't hear anyone. I was lost in my thoughts when I swooshed into this incredible, most beautiful, brightest, and ever golden light. There are no words to describe it. You have to see it. However, it is not a blinding light. You're a part of what is happening. When I relive this, I get chills, tears, and goosebumps. Every time I tell this story, my heart skips a beat and I feel an incredible sense of peace and love. It's the first time I've written about it. My heart started pounding when I saw Dr. Sam Parnia was conducting a study and I was desperate to hear about other people's similar experiences. I didn't see a tunnel, but there could have been one. I was traveling through the light at an incredible speed/absorption when I came to this open space of light and saw all of these images of people outlined in light. Nobody was dressed, and I couldn't tell whether they were male or female. There were no limits. It was as wide as the eye could see, and I could see images of people in their forms as far as the eye could see. I felt no fear at all. I was overcome with feelings of love and peace that I can only describe and never fully express. I felt loved and accepted. I'd never felt so loved in my entire life. The peace, serenity, joy, and lack of pain were incredible. Prior to this, my body was contracting and contorting as I fought for my life to breathe. I was in agony. Not now. It was just quiet. I then started talking to myself in the head rather than moving my lips. It was the most beautiful day of my life, and I couldn't believe it was happening and how fortunate I was. I went on and on because there wasn't enough room to write at all. I started thinking, oh my God, I didn't tell anyone I was going. Then I was shown my present and current life at the time. I was looking down from above. I wasn't in the room, but I could see this action shot of me in the middle of it. The respiratory guy was resuscitating me with the ambu bag. The ER doctor was in charge of the code. The nurse was in the room. A nurse's aide was holding my hand, and a nurse was at my feet. The room was in shambles, with me in the middle of my hospital bed. I remembered how I never got to tell anyone how much I loved them or how I was leaving. I needed to tell people that I would miss them and that they would miss me. I was talking again at breakneck speed, and then, as I was speaking, I felt myself being swooshed back, but this time I could feel a puff of air being pushed into my lungs and my eyes opening to blinding light from the room. Everyone was staring at my eyes. The agony was unbearable. My entire body was on fire. I attempted to speak, but was unable to do so. I started to struggle, and then, like a wave of calm, my body relaxed. No struggle. I was aware that my family had been contacted. I could feel their presence. I was pretty much out for the next few weeks.